My name is George Talbot. I'm Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research and Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences here, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here to Vicky Karkou's inaugural lecture. The university is, of course, committed to the well-being of its staff and students, and it was with a view to developing our research activities in this area that we appointed Vicky just over a year ago. Vicky completed her postgrad studies at Manchester and at Roehampton, and after that she worked in various clinical settings and academic institutions around the UK, including the University of Hertfordshire, and then subsequently Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, where she spent about 10 years before joining us in 2013. She's a very widely published authority on dance and arts therapy, and she's currently editing the Oxford Handbook of Dance and Wellbeing, and working. She edits a journal called Body Movement and Dance in Psychotherapy. She's going to be talking to us tonight about dance and the arts in psychotherapy and the extent to which they make a contribution to well-being. So, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Vicky Karkou.
Thank you, George, for introducing me, and thanks for all the support you have given me since I started here. Just with that in mind, a few more thanks to people, just to open it, in a positive way and way of acknowledging people as well that who have been here since I started. Just to refer to Professor Kevin Verney and Professor Victor Merriman for their support for research and their presence in that front. And I really need to thank Professor David Pima, who I'm trying to find in the audience. He disappeared now. Here he is, who has been there not only supportive, but beyond that inspirational. And David, thanks for managing with me all the times of difficulties and the times of when we managed to go ahead and have successes in what we were doing. And we have had a number of them so far. So if nothing else, if not personal successes, I feel fortunate that I have been, I've joined the Department of Performing Arts that has a very thriving dance degree, degree that has been regarded as a flagship area for good reasons, having had the high NSS course in the university and one of the top in the country, and creating opportunities for dance professionals, young professionals and students to grow and be ready for the field. Also create opportunities for research to grow within that, within formal and informal environments. I also joined the department where applied arts and applied performance are areas that are present throughout, and somehow create opportunities and advance opportunities for graduate employment. At the postgraduate level, we have the MA in Dance Movement Psychotherapy that is highly innovative and has a strong international appeal that offers both academic and professional qualifications and license to practice. These, next to postgraduate students who are growing fast in the department, and we are proud to see our first graduates completing, probably first PhD candidates completing this year, and more joining us every year. So I feel very fortunate. And I feel I joined a warm, collaborative, and fast-growing university, which of course won the University of the Year award, and we need to talk about that and mention it because it's an important thing. I also feel I have found a very good home to expand on work I have started over 20 years ago in the nearby city of Manchester, the place I landed when I first came to the UK from Greece. It was there, while doing my postgraduate studies at the University of Manchester, young and innocent as I was, where I discovered that my passions in dance, the arts, and psychology could overlap. Since then, I ran with this as a topic that took a research, an academic and professional strand, offering me opportunities to be constantly intrigued, surprised, and fascinated. So in this presentation, I will attempt to offer refer to some of the highlights from this journey and share some of my discoveries over the years. I'll find out how the technology works, which is useful. Okay, so the aims of the presentation. First of all, I will look at the concept of well-being. I'll attempt to identify some key ingredients of the arts that can contribute to well-being. I will attempt to contextualize some ideas within a wider theoretical frame, or theoretical frames rather, discuss effectiveness, value, and impact, and introduce the new Arts for Wellbeing research group. A lot to cover, so I need to make sure that I do it without diverting from the point. It would be good if I had some indication when I'm drifting off. So hopefully I'll stay on task. So if we look at well-being, first of all, and definitions and measurements, we'll look at some of the dictionary definitions, refer to well-being as the state of being comfortable, healthy, or happy, the condition of being contented, healthy, or successful. These are definitions which indicate that well-being is multidimensional, and often, not only in dictionary definitions, but in literature as a whole, people who attempt to define well-being, they end up often refer to the aspects of well-being rather than offer a concise definition. So this is one characteristic of the area, it seems. We have also frequent connections between happiness and health. Well-being equating to happiness, well-being equating to health. I haven't mentioned that I'm a qualified dance movement psychotherapist, and the psychotherapist in me somehow feels quite uncomfortable with the idea that well-being equates to happiness. I find happiness a concept that probably it's a bit flatter or lighter or not having substantial, sufficient substance and depth. Nevertheless, this is often the connection. I'm much more comfortable with a connection with health. A connection also that has been made by the World Health Organization, who defines well-being, or rather health, as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Also, in terms of mental health in particular, is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. It appears as if these two definitions suggest that well-being is something that is actively present, something good that is actively present, It also refers to an individual who has agency and can cope and can relate with his or her environment. And these, I think, are important aspects of the concept of well-being as I see it. Now, since 2011, we have started measuring well-being, and measuring it officially and nationally. And not only nationally, we're measuring at a European level as well, which is a very interesting development, a development that has a very strong political agenda and a lot of pressure from the current government and governments in Europe. Some say because there is a strong political desire to divert our attention from an economic crisis. Nevertheless, according to the Office for National Statistics, we're measuring how people, neighborhoods and countries are doing beyond economic growth. And on the basis of a debate, a national debate, that was completed in 2011, we have now 10 measurable dimensions. We have a dimension that refers to personal well-being, and I'll stay on this one for a bit longer throughout the presentation. Our relationship, health, what we do, where we live, the natural environment, personal finance, the economy, education and skills, and governance. So it is an interesting critique. How come this type of measurement and attention to this concept has come about, and when it has come about? However, for people like me who have had an interest in this area for a long time, I find that the attention that is currently placed on personal well-being in particular, which is the main dimension that is focused upon often, is important. And also we have a measurement of engagement with the arts. So if we look at these two aspects a bit more through the national statistics, we'll see, first of all, that they sit within a bigger picture, the national picture of well-being, which looks like this. You cannot see much. You can check on the website the particular figures. The measurements are updated every 6 months, I think, and they're available on the official, the Office for National Statistics. What we can see from there is the different colors, different dimensions of well-being. And if we look closer, we'll look at personal well-being, amongst other dimensions, is defined as a dimension that refers to life satisfaction, worthwhileness, daily happiness, daily anxiety, and general mental well-being. On the other hand, when we're thinking about engagement with the arts, under the dimension of what we do, we can see engagement with the arts being measured as something that happens at least 3 times in a year. A number of us would argue that this is very thin, very light reference to engagement with the arts, which especially knowing that I speak to people, a number of people in the audience come from the arts, we have much more to say about how we engage with the arts, certainly, than just attending 3 times a cinema or going to the theatre. So, and not only that, we know that intuitively, if not academically, if not through our research and our experiences, we know that the contribution the arts can make to well-being, it's much more serious than that. I feel, given my own biases, that the area where the arts for well-being being sit much more comfortably, and we can learn much from this area is arts psychotherapies, the arts psychotherapies. Just to say a few words about this field, the term in itself is an umbrella term that refers to 4 different disciplines: music therapy, art psychotherapy, drama therapy, and dance movement psychotherapy. These different disciplines have organized themselves in professional associations. They receive regulation from the Health and Care Professions Council, with the exception of dance movement psychotherapy that is in the waiting process of completion for this regulation. Training happens at the postgraduate level. It requires 2 years master's level at least. And people work in a number of different areas, in hospitals, in schools, and the community, in private organizations, voluntary organizations, etc., or in private practice, with a number of different client populations, from children to older people, primarily because these people who seek out art psychotherapists need psychological support. So it's a form of psychotherapy. I didn't know any of this when I started 20 years ago. So I was very interested and curious about this area. So I spent something like the first 5-6 years certainly, and many more years after that, to try to find out what arts therapies are and what similarities and differences they have, and how they may be contributing to well-being. The result of this extremely in-depth, wise and profound knowledge from years of research has been published in this book. This is my first book that was co-written with my PhD supervisor, and looked at similarities and differences amongst arts therapies. Now, one of the first tasks I did when I started looking at the area, it was trying to figure out whether these different forms of psychotherapy had key features that were shared across, in order to be able to say, okay, this is one PhD study rather than 4 different ones. And based on definitions, official definitions and descriptions from the professional associations, I came across, I came up with these as important features amongst arts therapies. Unlike other disciplines, in arts therapies we have an active engagement in the arts. People who engage in the process do not have to have talent, do not necessarily have to have skill. Most likely they don't have skill, and often they don't have social or other skills as well. That's why they're there. But active engagement in the arts is regarded key, active rather than passive, receiving music, for example, from somebody. Although there are schools of thought on this direction as well. Creativity is an important other feature. And creativity in a way that enables people to become creative in such a way that they can find solutions to problems, they can come up with new meanings and new solutions in a way that this becomes relevant not only for what's happening within therapy, but also becomes relevant for their lives in general. Imagery, symbolism, and metaphor are highly valued. Next, or with non-verbal communication as an important bias amongst arts psychotherapies. because it's a form of psychotherapy, but not only. I think people who are working in applied arts and applied performance will also agree that the relationship between people in a group and the relationship between the facilitator and participants in general is an important factor. And unlike attending a dance class for fun or for fitness, an important characteristic in this case is we have an intentional use of the arts. These were some aspects of the art psychotherapies that were shared across, but I propose that this can also be considered as important active ingredients and for change. And for change, therapeutic change, if the context is art psychotherapies, but if it's another context, if we're talking about arts and health, then these may be, these ingredients can contribute towards well-being in a wider sense. However, using these different ingredients, and some of our colleagues here who are working in applied fields, I'm sure they're very familiar and comfortable with this as concepts. Using these ingredients does not turn a particular practice into a form of psychotherapy. And art psychotherapies are very precious about that. What I came up from a survey of practitioners in 1996, that was repeated in 2011, I believe, and there was a European strand also happening. Came up with 6 therapeutic frames, 6 therapeutic tendencies, which seem to be particularly relevant amongst arts therapies, and they refer to complex ways of working with clients that require training to use. I'm going to mention all 6 of them. Here they are: humanistic, psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, eclectic, integrative, developmental, active, directive, and artistic, creative. We'll want us to pay more attention, however, to the first 3 today, because they are amongst the most popular ones, and also because they are relevant, I think, for other aspects of this presentation. So we have the humanistic frame in particular. This is the most popular amongst the art therapies, and it refers to influences from Rogers, primarily Rogers, but also Peirce and Yalom. And when art therapists refer to this therapeutic frame, the emphasis is what is happening between people. There is a very interactive and interpersonal type of work that focuses on the here and now, attempts to create real relationships rather than different types of relationships. And real means that the therapist is present there with their whole self. Often this therapeutic frame is seen as a model, a positive model of growth. In the National Survey of Practitioners in 1996, some of the practitioners said, "What I'm working towards is a sense of self-responsibility. The purpose of therapy has to do with wholeness. Arts therapies have to do with individuals becoming who they really are." So this gives you a bit of a flavor of the main concepts around this frame. If we move to the psychoanalytic psychodynamic frame, we have, of course, influences from Freud as the father of psychoanalysis, but not only. Post-Freudians are particularly relevant. The emphasis here often is in what is happening within the person. So we have a humanistic model where the relationship becomes important. The traditional psychoanalytic view of the world is very much about the intrapersonal engagement. The aim is to achieve insight. The focus is on the unconscious. There is a there and then emphasis in the past. Transferential relationship is important. And some argue that this model of work focuses primarily on difficulties, as opposite to the previous model that was much more positive and upbeat. Some of the statements art psychotherapists came up with is that I do analyze in a psychoanalytic way. I'm trying to link the client's past with their present lives. I'm looking at the transference between client and therapist. Looking at the third therapeutic frame, we look at an eclectic integrative frame that assumes that the self is in flux and that work is flexible. There is a selection of ideas and approaches adapting to the setting where one works and the needs of the clients. Practitioners said, I use a number of different approaches for each client. It depends which population I'm working with, what sort of theoretical approach I'm adopting. So we have a much more adaptable and much more fluid model, which somehow links up not only with this very particular way of working within art psychotherapies, but with wider and contemporary theoretical ideas and what I call theoretical shifts. So we have a shift from modernism to postmodernism. With this, we have very strong questioning of universality, questioning of one truth and the belief in grand narratives. And as a result of that, there is an acceptance that there are multiple voices. The context within which things are happening is valued, and many narratives are highlighted as important. Positioning within a particular context becomes an important language and important stance as well. This positioning is not there for long, it's temporal and in flux, and encourages ongoing dialogue for what is useful in particular context and time. So this is one big theoretical shift, connects very well with practices that connect with eclectic or integrative approaches, but not only. It has an impact on those with a psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, or a humanistic approach, and shifts their perspective slightly and the way of working. Another major shift within the art psychotherapies, and a wider field is that we have a shift from a Freudian drive theory to relational theories. And if we move Freud out of the way, there is a shift from the belief that people are and they have internal motivation that make them do things, to a relational shift that says that my interaction with others is an important interaction that shapes me, that makes me who I am and explains how I am in the world. We are talking about relational psychoanalysis, for example, and Mitchell. We're talking about attachment and Bowlby, attunement and Stern. Trevathan talks about proto-conversations and highlights the idea of intersubjectivity. We have discoveries from the Italian team in Parma of mirror neurons that have become extremely popular, and it seems to be a lot of discussion around what is happening in the brain in relation to another, when one views another. So these are some important shifts that have an impact in ways of thinking and ways of practicing. Are or not always as connected with this idea of questioning what has been a Cartesian dualism, and shifting this dualism and the separation between the mind and the body to an acknowledgement that mind and body are connected, but not only. Mind, body, and emotions are connected. So we have, we're talking about embodied cognition, we're talking about embodied affect. This has started very much from phenomenologists like Merleau-Ponty, who talked about the lived experience. But it seems the neuroscientists such as Damasio and Panksepp, people who have run with the idea that the feelings are situated in the body and motivate us somehow, explain how we are in the world and how we perceive and understand the world. So we were talking about embodiment coming back at a smaller field of the arts psychotherapies, we're certainly talking about dance movement psychotherapy. This is an area that embodiment sits extremely comfortably, and even, you know, sort of before any studies on neuroscience and before any conceptual shifts to relational thinking has taken place, dance movement psychotherapy since the 40s, we're talking about the basic assumption of the work that was that mind and body are connected, and changes in the one facilitate changes in the other. The Association of Dance Movement Psychotherapy has defined, stated that the aim of dance movement psychotherapy is to connect physical, cognitive, emotional, and social aspects of oneself and foster integration. This somehow assumes that the self needs to connect. There is an assumption that oneself is in flux, is fragmented, or is in danger of fragmentation. So the ultimate aim of therapy is bringing all these different pieces together. The medium through which dance movement psychotherapy takes place is very much the use of creative movement and dance. Improvisation is big. However, it's the medium used in such a way that there is a clear intention for therapeutic outcomes. So again, context, what we talked about, context within the postmodern frame becomes particularly relevant. And I remember in my early days when I was trying to figure out what was the difference between creative dance and dance movement psychotherapy, somebody very usefully said, it's all about the intention and the context. It may not look that different if you're just having a snapshot of what is happening in place, but the intention and the context defines and creates a different frame. As a form of psychotherapy, relationships become important, and interpersonal and interactive models are very popular amongst arts therapists. What is happening between people is key. One of the most popular models of work in dance movement psychotherapy is the interactive or Chasian model, which is very different from authentic movement, for example. It's a Jungian practice that looks very much about what is happening within the person, often with one eyes closed, in order to focus on internal processes. And pioneers of dance movement psychotherapy in the UK, Helen Payne and Bonnie Meekums, talk very much about integrative models. Models where things come together, connect the internal and the relational, find a helpful and useful marriage. So these are a few ideas around dance movement psychotherapy. Remember when I first started being interested in work, and I went back to Greece, and I said to my father, I want to become a dance movement psychotherapist. What? And the question around what on earth this was of course very, very relevant. And then when I managed to introduce the ideas and, he had some kind of sense of what it was, then the second question was, well, does this work? And it nagged me. I reacted because I had to react as a sort of a daughter who wanted to take off and find her own position. And I started saying things like, of course, this is not relevant. Sort of the relationship is important, or something I had been reading recently at that time. But this stayed with me, and the issues around effectiveness and whether interventions, and not only dance movement psychotherapy, but generally whether things have an outcome or not, or it's all about the process and only about the process, became an aspect of my research work. But effectiveness is very much a concept that relates to systematic reviews, meta-analysis, and randomized control trials. These are particular types of studies that often raise tensions amongst art psychotherapists, and even more so amongst artists, since they fall largely under the paradigm of positivism, its reliance on what is seen as scientific as opposite to artistic, and to what can be measured. It also links very well with this idea of finding a big, universal, one truth. Does it work? Yes. So this yes, unfortunately, I'm trying to convince myself to deliver to you today, because we're in a theater and I need to do something theatrical, and I don't have much to offer as a therapist. This yes answer is not necessarily one that can be said with a lot of conviction. Still, art psychotherapists working in a hybrid field have attempted to answer questions around effectiveness and try to engage with this sort of type of research as a way often of desperation, as a way of making sure that the employment continues and the job is still in place. So there's a lot of pressure for art psychotherapists, and not only to provide evidence of effectiveness. So I'm going to talk very briefly about some examples from dance movement psychotherapy. These are some systematic reviews and meta-analysis that are available in the field. I have been involved in conducting Cochrane reviews with particular populations. Depression and dementia are the ones that the areas that I'm working in, with colleagues from Leeds University and my very good colleague Bonnie Meekums. Hopefully these studies will be completed. The depression study, we keep thinking it's complete for the last 2-3 years, but it's still not complete. But we submitted it for the 3rd time before Christmas, so hopefully this will be the last revision we have done. We are about to start the review on dementia. This is a subgroup analysis from Cochrane review on depression. How weird is that, showing numbers of this kind and this kind of audience and in this place? Briefly to say, this is 3 studies have been included in total after reviewing a number of studies. And we found that all studies indicated a reduction of symptoms of depression for the dance movement psychotherapy group. The adult studies were better in many respects. The adolescent study, although there was a reduction in the symptoms of depression in dance movement psychotherapy, the end scores, when these scores were compared with a control group, we found out that there was no statistical difference. Probably due to some initial problems with randomization. Now, this has certain implications for dance movement psychotherapy, but not only. First of all, the conclusions we can draw from 3 studies, and one of which was a bit of, sort of not as strong in terms of statistical findings, are very modest. This is not very different from other areas in arts psychotherapy where this type of research has been used. We can see from the few studies that survive rigor and manage to be seen as good enough to be included in a systematic review of this kind, that the 9 out of 10 will have positive effects for diverse symptoms and conditions. There is an indication of reduction of depression and anxiety and a potential contribution to quality of life. Interestingly, these 3 concepts, depression, anxiety, and quality of life, map up very well with the national measures of well-being. So the Office for National Statistics talks about happiness instead of depression, because it has a positive spin on things, anxiety, and life satisfaction, which often is closely linked with quality of life. However, where the findings are inconclusive, we have a danger of placebo effect, primarily due to the control receiving no treatment or treatment as normal. And one of the major criticism of this type of studies as a whole is that we don't always have a deep understanding of therapeutic process, or the process is not highlighted as part of the study. And most likely there is no space for the voice of participants to be heard. These 2 areas, process and people's voices, can be better captured through looking at user satisfaction surveys and small-scale evaluative studies. So I'm going to just mention a few local and national studies. A survey from Mind indicated that 70% of the service users regarded art psychotherapy as beneficial and rated them as one of the top 3 treatments of choice, which was interesting. A survey by Tizard Center and Bernardus indicated that women take to it. It's an interesting gendered finding. A pilot study of users of arts therapies that was completed by their professional associations made a point at that point. At that time, it was a time when services were closing and interventions were, the length of the intervention was reduced. The respondents to this survey indicated that there were more benefits from receiving interventions that were over 3 months and ideally over a year. In a report that we have put together on behalf of the Scottish Arts Therapists Forum and that was supported by Quality Improvement Scotland and the NHS Education Scotland. There was an argument that using these interventions has benefit all around. For the patient, positive outcomes could be achieved through receiving a psychological intervention that may suit them better than verbal interventions and, at times, carry less stigma. For the service, the benefits in terms of achieving their targets, for example, reducing medication and readmission rates. In a national survey of art psychotherapy, some qualitative findings indicate that unlike popular views that when you engage in the arts therapies or in the arts per se, you manage to self-express, and this is the ultimate, this is what the whole work is about. In these qualitative findings, we discovered that a list of other things that could be of potential benefit. Self-esteem, reconnecting with self and others, being seen and heard, a sense of self, acquiring meaning, managing to function better. And in terms of well-being, particularly for adults with depression, which was the interest of this study, it was important that a sense of hope was instilled, and people somehow through the arts could manage to use a more fulfilling life. So we have a number of different ways of capturing people's and participants' voices. In my second book, I looked particularly at children and schools, in particular as a memory of the fact that I started as a teacher, I guess, and I've worked in schools and special schools in particular. Some of the participants in a secondary school, 11 to 13-year-olds, stated that the things that they valued more from participating in a dance movement psychotherapy group was the fact that people worked together to achieve more. One said, I like doing the activities and doing the dance. It's interesting how thin somehow these statements are. They are 11 to 13-year-olds. Similar, interesting, but somehow thin qualitative findings we get from all the people who were residents in care homes, some of whom had difficulties speaking because they had strokes or they had beginnings of dementia, etc. Some of those who were more able stated that they valued particularly the physical aspects of the work. It made you feel cheerful, and everyone seemed happy to do the exercises. I felt invigorated after the session. Also, they praised the overall attitude of the facilitator. He didn't push us to do things we couldn't manage. So what do we know so far from looking at surveys and small-scale studies? We know that users often value arts psychotherapies because of the use of the arts media per se. They enjoy that. They enjoy the engagement with the arts. They also enjoy the opportunity to use the arts with others. Those who are more psychologically minded and more able to speak may talk about the opportunity to work things through. Certainly the arts therapists believe that that's what they're doing. That's where the work is. But in these studies, there is an assumption that participants can and will speak, and that artistic engagement and any therapeutic value that comes from this can or even should be measured or articulated. So it's an interesting assumption. This is certainly not an assumption that holds water when one works with older people with advanced dementia or those with certain types of disabilities who can't talk, adolescents in existential angst, who, people with severe depression who will not talk. So we need to find different ways of capturing participants' perception of the work, and also we need to start thinking about how translating primarily arts-based experience to either numbers or words cannot necessarily capture the essence of this experience. It is possible that it is much more impactful if one engages with practice as research, as a methodology, and associated methodologies to this, like artistic or heuristic inquiry. So I think there is an argument to make here that practice as research, especially when we're talking about the arts and the engagement of the arts, makes a strong contribution to impact. So what does this type of research offer? I will claim that there is no attempt to argue for effectiveness. Don't know what happened or whether it worked. There is no attempt to impart cognitive knowledge, but I have a sense that it may engage a larger audience. It can certainly communicate effective aspects of the topic, or at least it did that to me. And I feel it may have a lot to add in terms of contribution to impact. As a conclusion, I'll try to sum up what we have discussed so far. I claim that well-being goes beyond happiness. Lessons we have learned from art psychotherapies indicate that we can start thinking about well-being as a state in which you find out more about yourself and insight, even bearing the unbearable, as Kleinians may be arguing for, or from the more humanistic psychotherapists, we may learn about, think about well-being as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to acquire meaning. As far as arts are concerned, in order to contribute towards well-being, we cannot only be thinking about one going to a theatre 3 times a year. We need to be thinking about more active engagement, and also that the arts have a potential not just merely to release feelings and self-express, but also to create links and deeper links with oneself and with others, and as art therapists claim, to work things through. We need to look further in terms of searching for active ingredients effective practices, value and impact. These are far from being dealt with, but we might be just scratching the surface. And I think it's extremely important to start thinking about methodologies that go certainly beyond quantitative means to include qualitative paradigms. As far as qualitative research, it seems that the people out there start becoming much more aware and more accepting of this type of methodologies, with Cochrane collaboration, for example, having a separate register and for systematic reviews of qualitative studies, and recent call for bid from ESRC and other funding bodies on well-being called for synthesis of quantitative RCTs as well as qualitative data. So we have really moved a long way since I first started researching the area, where quantitative seemed to be the one main way of undertaking research. But I claim that we haven't gone far enough yet. We need to start thinking about arts-based research and finding ways of engaging data that speaks to the experience as is. And this is common practice for a number of us here who are artists, but not necessarily a type of research that is as valued outside the artistic sphere. I would also argue that given that we're talking about a multifaceted area of work, both well-being and the arts, we have a major complexity there, and the combination even more so. Working collaboratively becomes essential as a way of bringing together different expertise, different perspectives, and different methodologies. And for this reason, we're trying to bring together the Arts for Wellbeing research group that has started as a group with aspiration that will grow and will become more formal in the future. The aim is to generate evidence of good arts practice for well-being across the lifespan, with evidence being defined as arts-based, qualitative and quantitative, and with a focus on effectiveness, value and impact for diverse arts for well-being practices, not just art psychotherapies. I have my bias, but I don't want to use it necessarily throughout. Some of the research priorities looking at all the people, including dementia, made links with health and computing for this area, and some of the first research activities we're engaged with. Adults with mental health problems, including trauma and depression, links with psychology have been made. And we're looking at children and adolescents, including children at risk and those with developmental coordination problems, as part of agendas held in education, but also speaking to some of our own interests. These are some members from the Department of Performing Arts that already committed to the group, and there are more to come. These are members of staff and PhD students. And as part of the group, we have a number of very prominent figures in the field, as visiting professors and fellows from the US and the UK. We have, for those who are familiar with drama therapy, Professor David Reed Johnson is one of the most prolific clinical psychologists and drama therapists from the States, who has done a lot of work across arts therapies and beyond with children with trauma. Diane Waller is an emeritus professor now from Goldsmiths, who is a main name leading the field in the arts therapies. Professor Raymond MacDonald from Edinburgh University is a music psychologist and music improviser who is heading the music department in Edinburgh University, and Bonnie Meekums from the University of Leeds. She's one of the pioneers of dance movement psychotherapy in the field. There are more to come, a series of events, research activities, and a plethora of publications, but the presentation comes to an end here. Hopefully with more beginnings in terms of drinks and snacks, but not before Kevin say a few words. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Vicky, and good evening, everybody. As many of you know, my name is Kevin Burney. I'm Associate Dean for Research in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, and it's my great pleasure this evening to give the vote of thanks. And I think it's a testimony, really, to Vicky's reputation both as a lecturer and a researcher that so many of you are here tonight despite the inclement weather outside. There probably aren't too many things that one can predict with any degree of confidence about the outcome of the general election in a few months' time. But one thing that probably is a safe bet is that whoever ends up in Downing Street after the 7th of May as Prime Minister, one of the things that they will stress is that the importance of impact. In other words, that the work and research of university researchers isn't just an interest to other academics, but also has to be relevant to the wider needs of society. And I think that Vicky's lecture this evening really is a splendid example of how that aspiration can be met. And it's reflected, of course, as I think as really Vicky poignantly demonstrated, not just in her own research, but also typifies the work of many in our Department of Performing Arts. And indeed has included, for example, imaginative and pioneering work with children at Alderhay and their families. And I think too, Vicky's lecture this evening also in a wider sense reflects Edge Hill's growing reputation as a university for research that is both academically outstanding, but also relevant to the wider needs of society. And again, that's evidenced not just by the University of the Year Award, which has already been mentioned, but also in the results of the Research Excellence Framework only last month, in which experts panels of our peers assessed the work of Edge Hill researchers as being internationally excellent and world-leading in every subject area in our submission. But we're not sitting on our laurels. We always aspire to do even better. And that's reflected in the fact that in the forthcoming month or two, we have a further 5 inaugural lectures in psychology, health, education, for example, by new professors to Edge Hill. And also, too, we of course hope that many of you we will see again at both those events, and also other public lectures that we have organised this term, which are too many for me to attempt to list now, but are of course available for you to look at and book a place on the Edge Hill University website. As Vicky has already mentioned, you will be pleased to know that before you have to brave the winter gales outside, we do have some drinks and light refreshments outside to fortify you for the journey. And I'm sure that Vicky will also be very happy to take questions about her research in the Arts for Wellbeing group as well, over a glass of wine or so. But before we do partake of those refreshments, I'd like to invite you all to join me once again in thanking Vicky for her excellent lecture this evening.